Views expressed by CamaPlan podcast guests may not reflect those of CamaPlan. CamaPlan does not guarantee the accuracy of information provided by guests, nor does it endorse or recommend any individual or organization. CamaPlan is not an investment advisor, CPA, realtor, or attorney. You are encouraged to conduct your own due diligence before making investment choices. For any tax, legal, accounting, investment, or other questions, please consult a specialist. Welcome back to the Road to Financial Freedom, where experts share stories and secrets to unlocking financial independence. This podcast is brought to you by CamaPlan, a self-directed IRA administrator focusing on educating investors on how to grow retirement savings faster through alternative investments. I'm Ricky Trong, CamaPlan team member and podcast host. In each episode, we're going to take an in-depth look at the many roads taken to financial freedom and how they differ for each guest. Welcome back to the Road to Financial Freedom. Today's guest started out traveling the world working on multiple businesses. And in 2000, he moved to Orlando and vowed to never work for someone else again. He found his niche in short sales, and he's here to explain his journey. Please help me welcome Dohn Thornton of Infinite Wealth Strategist and help us find out more about his journey. Hey, Dohn, how you doing?
Doing fantastic. I really appreciate you inviting me on your podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to get to talking to you. I know you started out in short sales, and today we're talking about some great things that are going on with you. Please tell me a little bit about your background and where you're at today and what's going on for you.
Well, it's an interesting story because, the fall of the Soviet Union completely changed my career trajectory. My whole plan was to become a foreign service officer. I was going to become a Slavic language expert, in the field. That's what I wanted to specialize in. And I was in my sophomore year. I was majoring in Russian and political science. And then I needed to get to Russia where I could learn the language fluently. So I had previously spent 2 years in Finland and I learned Finnish. And then I was looking for a way to go to Russia, to Soviet Union at the time. And the only thing I could find was I could work on a fishing boat in the Bering Sea in Alaska, near Alaska, which that didn't sound very fun, or sign on for a 2-year contract to work at the embassy in Moscow. So I picked that. And I went there. And by the time I finished, there was no longer any Soviet Union. And I stayed because there were so many opportunities. I mean, at that time, American companies if you had an American passport and you spoke Russian fluently, they just throw money at you. So I said, you know what, I'm going to put that foreign service thing on hold. And then, of course, I got married to a Russian woman who that blew my security clearance. So I wasn't going to work for the Foreign Service anyway. So I said, okay, capitalism, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. So I was hired by Polaroid. Remember back then when they actually had Polaroid cameras, they were doing a joint venture with the Russian Atomic Energy Ministry. They were basically bringing in parts into Russia, and then they were obviously assemble the cameras and then ship them out. That was what they were doing. And they just said, you speak Russian, you American, boom, go, here you go. $6,000 a month is like, back in the day, that was a lot of money. And so I said, sure, let's do it. And then I, just by chance, I was talking to this other American, because the expat community was pretty small. We all knew each other. So this guy said, man, I got this great thing. We're picking up these 16 millimeter cinematography cameras, and we're buying them for like $10 and we're selling them for like $300, $400 in California. And my internet went, opportunity. So I did some research, found out where they were at. I borrowed some money and I bought 100 of them. I put 4 in my suitcase. I took a leave of absence from my job. I said I had to go to America for some reason or whatever. I don't remember anymore. And I just put them in my suitcase, and I flew to Los Angeles, and I just started going around to different film schools. UCLA, USC, and just there's a ton of them obviously there. And I all I had were just samples, and I walked away from that week with $20,000 worth of checks and orders. So I said, okay, I'm going to start my own business. So I spent 3 years. I developed a company. I started a company called Mentor USA, and I started importing to the United States cinematography equipment, and did really well until until they ran out of cameras. And then I tried to get them to get to start the production up again. And we had an agreement. $75 was, I could still make decent money at that. And we signed the contracts. And when it came time to actually, they got the first shipment, they said, oh, by the way, we're changing our price to $500. And it's like, what are you going to do? You're in Russia. You're not going to sue, because who are you going to sue? You know, it was a Wild West back then. So I said, well, so much for that project. And I had to get out of that one. And I did some other stuff. But, you know, by the time, and in the meantime, I got divorced and remarried. And I said that I'm done with Russia. Let's just go to America. And so I went to, we took my wife, my daughter. We moved to Orlando. And I got a job with a company. The first thing he did was send me back to Russia because they were a pipeline inspection company. And they said, we want you to try to get business in Eastern Europe. So I said, sure. So I was there for about a year and a half. But what was really frustrating, what really changed my life, was the fact that I was able to put together a multinational consortium designed to inspect, clean, and treat water pipes in the former Soviet, in Russia. And we did a pilot project for the St. Petersburg Water Company, and it went very well. And they had an order of $20 million ready to go. And my company said, yeah, you know what? What happens if our equipment breaks down and we don't want to do this, so we're pulling out. And in one fell swoop, I went from getting a $1 million bonus and being involved in this. And this was going to be my chart to utter riches. And they pulled out and I just said, you know what? I said, with just like that, I went from everything's cool, honey, we're great, to I have to go back to America and find a job or do something, because I can't support you anymore. So I had to drop them off. I mean, luckily my father-in-law, Russian father-in-law, was very well, was very well off, and he was able to take care of them. But I didn't see my family for 2 years. But I said, that's it. I will never ever work for anyone again. So I went back to Orlando, and I tried. I got my mortgage license. I got my real estate license. I was trying to do that, and the market was really booming back then. This was before the crash. This is like 2002 is when it started, when I started. And it took me 2 years to find myself. But I found, as I was failing with everything I was trying to do, if you look back with binoculars and you look at the road you traveled, how you got to where you end up being, you see that every single failure was actually necessary to get to this point. Although when you're in that journey, you think, oh my gosh, it's terrible. Why is nothing working out for me? But when I look back, it's like, yep, there you go. If I hadn't had that happen or that happen or that happen, I wouldn't got here. So eventually one of my acquaintances said, why don't you do short sales? There's a seminar in Tampa, go see it. And I went there and I didn't have any money. I was broke and I couldn't afford it. It was $3,000. So I asked the guy, the guru, I said, look, here I am. What would you say to someone like me who can't afford your seminar, but needs to get started? And he was a really nice guy. And he said, look, here's what you do. Go get the foreclosure list from the courts. Go out and knock on every single door and ask them if they will give you their house. And I said, come on, no one's going to give me their house, right? It just doesn't happen. He goes, do it. I was so desperate. If I wasn't that desperate, I probably would have said, whatever. But I was so desperate, I said, okay, I got to do it. And to my shock and chagrin, the very first door I knocked on, I got the guy to say yes,
Oh, wow.
And of course, it's not a fairy tale, because what happened was I didn't know what to do with it after that. So I got an investor from the local investing club, and he screwed me over 100%. He stole the deal from me because I was too stupid to get it. I didn't know. I wasn't stupid. I just didn't know to get it under contract with me first. And then I had my leverage and do a wholesale deal. I just said, I was so naive. Okay, great. These guys prey on newbies. And so he stole the deal from me. I was supposed to get $15,000, and just like, oh, well, so basically I went through 3 mentors, quote unquote mentors. They screwed me every single time. The last guy, I got him 36 houses in 10 weeks. Wow. Didn't get a dime from it. But every time I learned until there was 2 houses that I hadn't given to him yet before he said, get out of here. We don't want you anymore. We don't need you. So I still had those. And so I had to have some money. So I went and just did an ad saying, I will, in exchange for $4,000 per house up front, I will give you 50% equity stake in my short. So there's 2 short sales. I had this one lady, she said, you know what? I like your drive. I like your balls, basically, to do that. And she says, let's do it. It's only $8,000 or whatever. And she got me going until I was able to get my first closing. And this was in July or February of, I think it was February 17th of 2004. And I went from having to really supplement my food with, hot dogs from 7-Eleven with my 7-Eleven gas card to making almost $1 million by the end of the year. And then it just took off from there. And so, but it was just, if you think about it, the best thing that ever happened was these guys firing me or screwing me, because I would have been content to stay making 25%. And so, they're scumbags, but I mean, if you look at it from a personal development point of view, it was great because that really helped me get going. And so then, I mean, it's 20 years doing this, and short sales have been great. Although ever since COVID, it's really gone down because, it caused an artificial bubble in the market. Now the prices have appreciated so much that nobody's upside down their mortgage. So there's really no short sales. Very, very few short sales right now. So again, a crisis, a roadblock, whatever. But it helped me learn about this amazing tax and asset protection strategy that I'm doing not only with my short sale business, but also promoting it and teaching people how to do it. And, I think to myself, well, thank God that the market happened, that the market change happened, because I would never have paid attention to this. And now it's like, it's an integral part of my business model and what I'm doing as a second income, which is honestly going to be better than my short sale business.
Wow, that's awesome.
So, I'm rambling on here, but that's just how kind of what my story is and how I got to where I'm at. And that's what I'm doing.
No, that's great. And I love that's what you're doing, because you finally found your niche and, what worked out for you. I mean, you had to go through those pitfalls and those hard times to really find that. And I feel like that's a lot of people. Unfortunately, like, hindsight is always 20/20, and sometimes it does take that dramatic change to really put you on the right trajectory. Well, I'm glad it happened for you, because we wouldn't be having you on this podcast today if it didn't. So that's awesome. You mentioned tax strategies. So tell me a little bit about tax strategies that you promote or what you think is working for you in your business these days.
Well, I will tell you that this strategy that I'm, learned about myself and then, implementing and starting to educate people about has been around for, this tax strategy itself has been around since the 1930s. The trust that we use as the integral part of the strategy has been around for hundreds of years. And it had its origins in England with Henry VIII. It was designed to help landowners not get their assets seized by the crown. In this case, it was Henry VIII. The Reformation was going on. And, everybody thinks, well, Henry VIII has the wives, and then he broke away from the Catholic Church. What it actually was the first major land grab in recorded history, because he used that as pretext to just start taking, land from the nobles that wouldn't convert to the Church of England. And as a result of that, they banded together and came up with this trust that was based on English common law as a defense against unlawful seizures by Parliament or the Crown. And then it developed, and was modified and so forth. But basically, the principle of it's called a spendthrift trust, has been around since the 1500s. It came to America with the English when they colonized our country, and it stayed with us in the with the birth of the United States. And it has been around ever since. In fact, the Spendthrift Trust as an entity, the very first Supreme Court decision about that was in 1810, believe it or not. That's how long these have been around. The modern Spendthrift Trust, the only real modifications happened since then was when the U.S. started the tax code in the 1930s. And what was interesting is that the really, really rich have been using these trusts to protect their assets for hundreds of years. So all they did was make sure that when the tax code was set up, that this type of trust had incredible tax savings. So it stayed together. But there had to be an IRS code to make sure that was all legal. And so you don't want the IRS auditing you and seizing all your stuff. It has to be legal, right? So it was so nice of the Rothschilds that they let their attorneys help the U.S. government set the tax code up, and they quite conveniently put IRS Code 643 in there that enables people to. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. They can legally reduce their taxes to almost zero. And when you hear about the really, really rich people, about how in the press, well, this person doesn't pay taxes, and a secretary pays more taxes than this billionaire. Well, the reason is they have this strategy. And so, but it's been a very tight club. It's a very tight community, and they really haven't wanted to go out there and say, "Hey, everybody, we're up here and we're looking down on you. We don't want to give you any help. But we're going to keep this as a tight secret." Well, it's been slowly over the decades getting out more and more. And I would say that like the last 3 years, it's really started to penetrate what I would call normal society, maybe upper middle class society. And so I heard about it and I thought to myself, this is amazing. I got to get involved in this because it really is, honestly, I've been doing real estate for 20 years. The idea that I can have one trust and I never have to worry about my assets being seized by the government or having a lawsuit. Well, you can't even get a lawsuit against you. This trust has that much asset protection. Wow. And that alone would be amazing, especially for real estate investors. But when you use the special tax reduction capabilities in the trust to be able to legally reduce most of your taxes, then it just blows you away because you get 2 for 1. You get the asset protection and you get the tax strategies. So the biggest thing is that because of the nature of the trust that we provide for people, any capital gains can be deferred in perpetuity. You never have to pay them. You can convert ordinary income, right? So if you're a 1099 person, if you are a business owner, if you're a real estate investor, as long as you're not a W-2 employee, then you can set this strategy up and you can convert well over 90% of your income as active ordinary income that's taxed at 32% if you're above $165,000. You can convert that into permanently tax-deferred passive income, and you'll pay no taxes on it.
Wow.
So let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Let's say that you have $1 million that you have in pre-tax net income. Let's say that you had a good year and you had a gross revenue of 1.5 million. You do your deductions, expense everything out like everybody does, and you're left with $1 million in pre-tax net income. Normally, the IRS is going to charge you're going to cut a check for $320,000. It's 32%. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you normally pay $320,000 on that, then with us, what we can do is we can convert $970,000 of that into tax-free money.
Wow.
So that would leave you with a new pre-tax net income of $30,000. So do you think that how much are you going to pay from $30,000? Right? Not very much.
No.
Right? Meanwhile, you've been able to convert that into this tax-free, tax-deferred money into your trust, and it's there. And you're the trustee. You have full control over it. You own your asset. You don't own your assets anymore, but you control them. And meanwhile, you've paid very little, if none, no taxes. And that's how the rich do it.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, you totally just gave us like some trade secrets, I feel like.
Well, yeah, they are. And it's great. So I can tell you that it's the most brilliant strategy I've ever seen or heard of in my life. And I'm not just wanting to become. I'm not just implementing my business. I'm promoting it because I think anybody that makes $200,000 a year or more, as long as they're not a W-2 employee, they can get massive savings. And
That's
it's ridiculous.
amazing.
I mean, $200,000. Someone has $200,000 as a net income for a tax year. We can convert $194,000 of that into tax deferred money. You'll never pay it. Taxes on that money.
Wow. So the remainder of that is what's going to be taxed, right? So that's like the same example of the 32,000, right?
You just lower it down, right? So now instead of, from $1 million, it's $30,000 as your net income. Now this is $6,000 net income.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, because, the biggest thing, especially with, crypto and different, ways of creating revenue and income, we can take all that and, you can avoid any kind of capital gains on it and make sure that you don't have to pay hardly any taxes on it. So anybody who has a vehicle like that, investment vehicle, whether, real estate investing or buying and selling or whatever, anyone that does that, that's not W-2, I mean, this is a game changer because it's great and awesome to make the money, but it's even more important to protect it so you don't give away so much to Uncle Sam.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, asset protection is like, I just feel like you have to preach that because that's really important. And I don't think all people understand that. I mean, the money they make is taxed very heavily, like especially through a paycheck if you're working for someone else. I mean, not only are you paying it, I learned that the employer has to pay a tax on it as well. So they can't even give you as much as you should be entitled to for the most part. So that's asset protection is a huge thing. I love that you preach that. That's amazing. And you had mentioned something about law, like it's not even something someone can sue you over. Can you tell me like a little bit about like how it's completely lawsuit proof?
Well,
or lawsuit.
Anybody can sue anybody. Okay?
Right.
You can't prevent them from filing a lawsuit, but when it gets to in front of a judge and you or your attorney say, Your Honor, this is a spendthrift trust. And literally it's like getting a get out of jail free card. And the judge will say, he'll turn to the plaintiff and say, I'm sorry, but you can't sue this trust. Wow. Literally.
Yeah. So, I mean, I understand what you mean. Like a lawyer or a judge would just be like, well, because it's in the tax, it's a tax code, right? Like that's what it's going back to. In this case,
it's not the tax code. In this case, it's just the nature of the trust.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. And it has the spendthrift provision in the trust, which makes it basically it's based on common law, contract law. It's not based on legislative law. So whatever Congress creates, it can take away, change or amend orders. That's why you should never have your business, in an LLC or a S corp or whatever, because they're created by the government. There's no protection there. Okay. And we have an attorney on our staff, and he specialized in cracking open, LLCs, holding companies, land trusts, all that kind of stuff. He says you can get them. There are people selling these things, and people think they have 100% asset protection. They don't. He says like you can crack them if you want, and then but he says I can't crack this one. Wow. And when he realized he couldn't crack it, he got one, and now he's working with our company because why not, right? You want the uncrackable, and that's what this is. Is that from a legal point of view, it's based on contract law. It's and the Constitution, and there's been a number of Supreme Court rulings, other court rulings, which have basically have established a precedent that this type of trust with the spendthrift provision, the government has no right to get involved in a contract law situation. They can't tax it. And they can't legislate changes into it because it exists on its own on that basis. It's not a creature of the legislature, as we like to say. So that has nothing to do with the tax part of it. Okay. I'm saying you get two benefits in one trust. You get the 100% lawsuit proof asset protection, and then you have the amazing tax reduction that you can do with it. So you're getting two amazing things in one trust.
Wow. Thank you for explaining that. That really opened my eyes to that. So It's interesting that you said, like, everyone that I've talked to so far this season really preaches about putting their business into an LLC or things like that. So that's really interesting that the Spendthrift Trust is a safer entity for your,
Yes.
and it's for your business, correct? Like you could put your business in there. Is it you personally?
Well, what you do is you sell your assets, your personal and your business assets into the trust. Okay.
Gotcha.
All right. So then your business may still exist, but it's a hulk because nothing's there. It's just a name now because the trust owns all the assets.
Okay.
When you sell your assets, then you don't sell them for cash because you don't want to create a taxable event because that would be a capital gain situation. We want to avoid any kind of taxes. Right. So you sell them to the trust, and then the trust gives you what they call a demand note, which is kind of like a promissory note, but it's more like a money that you can convert into dollars whenever you want or need cash. So for example, if I sold $1 million worth of my assets into the trust, then I can go to the trust and say, okay, I demand $20,000, and the trust will give it to you because but you'll reduce your demand note by that $20,000. And it works until you get down to zero when the note is gone. So, but that's also not taxed, by the way. Taking that $20,000 is not a taxable event. Okay. So now you're the trustee of the trust. You have 100% discretionary power. You manage it. There's no one else there. You put your beneficiaries in there, whoever you want, your husband, your kids, whoever you want to be a beneficiary. Now you have your business, for all intents and purposes, is in this beneficial trust. Okay. Now you can run this tax strategy. You have to run it from another entity. That can be an LLC. It can also be a business trust that our company also can provide you. But let's just say from an LLC point of view, if you have your LLC set up, the beneficial trust is going to become a 90% limited partner in that LLC. Okay? Yeah. Bear with me here. Mm-hmm. Now, the LLC doesn't have any assets to run your business. Your assets are in the beneficial trust. Okay? The Spendthrift Beneficial Trust. So the beneficial trust is going to lease those assets over to your LLC. That allows your LLC to be able to run the business, generate revenue, and so on and so forth. So when let's go back to that example of $1.5 million of gross revenue. So let's say your LLC has produced that revenue, you use the assets that you sold to the beneficial trust. Now at tax time, once you've done your normal expenses and your deductions, we're down to pre-tax net income of $1 million. So how we convert that into tax-free money is exactly what I'm going to show you right now. The IRS will allow your beneficial trust to lease the assets to your LLC up to 70% of the net income.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to take that $700,000, 70% of the $1 million, and that's going to be transferred over to the beneficial trust as a lease payment for those assets. So we reduced our net income from 1 million down to 300,000. Now, at this point in time, we're going to take 90% of that, and we're going to transfer that over to the beneficial trust as a K-1 distribution for the beneficial trust's 90% equity stake in your LLC. Mm. And see, the K-1 distribution is passive income. Your lease payment for the assets is passive income. In accordance with IRS 643, Code 643, passive income coming into your trust is not taxable. It's not a taxable event.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so they can be deferred in perpetuity, right? Mm-hmm. So you can run this strategy through an LLC. There's one negative to this. You get absolutely no asset protection while your stuff is in the LLC. So what I tell people is, if you want to get the tax savings, you can just get the beneficial trust. It's less of an investment, but you're completely vulnerable on the LLC side because anybody can get that the access to whatever you're doing there. They put seizures on it. They can seize future earnings or whatever. What we recommend, if it's financially viable for people to have that kind of be able to invest that kind of money, is to get a business trust from our company. It does the same function as the LLC. It's 100% protected.
Wow.
So it's better than nothing. right? So you can do it through an LLC, but you're vulnerable on the asset protection side. If you combine the beneficial trust with our business trust, then it's bulletproof the entire transaction. So it's just a question of how much people have to invest. That's it.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yes.
It's so, I've never heard that. Like, I've never heard of, first off, the spendthrift trust. So I thank you for going through that with me. And then the differences with just having an LLC and the protections that come along with having this other. So is this something that you teach your clients? Is this something that you just hold for them? Tell me a little bit about the wealth
strategist.
Yeah. Wealth strategist. Yeah. Please tell me like a little bit about that and what you do for your clients.
Well, I am, like I said, I mean, in addition to being running my short sale business, which I continue to do, I'm also, I work with them as an agent, and we can sell them the trust or trusts, however they want to word. But what we do is basically have a one-on-one strategy session, and we talk about where they're at and what strategy works best for them. And we always recommend that they get the business trust. And if it's a situation where, it's just, they don't have that yet, then it's like, fine, no problem. We'll set you up with the beneficial trust, the spendthrift trust, and then you can run it through an LLC. When you start getting that massive tax savings, use that, invest some of that money and buy business trust and lock everything down. So, Rome wasn't built in a day. Sometimes you just need to do step by step. The great thing about this is that you get unlimited consultation with us and the accounting firm that we are affiliated with to make sure that everything is done correctly. You get everything set up, you sell your assets correctly, and then they'll basically teach your accountant unlimited amount of contact to make sure they're set up correctly to work with the trust, because most CPAs don't even know about it, frankly.
Yeah.
And so then you can get everything set up, and then they'll even do your first year's tax for you as part of your initial investment when you buy the trust.
Hey, that's awesome. I love this. I'm going to have to talk to my husband and see if we can get in touch with you and your team, because it sounds like something we'll need down the line. I love that. Well, where can we find you? Tell me a little bit about your websites or socials, things like that, your podcast. I know you're doing some podcasting. So tell me a little bit about those things.
Well, if you go, if you go on my YouTube, I'm at Dohn, D-O-H-N, make sure my name is spelled D-O-H-N, the Infinite Wealth Strategist. Okay. I also have I have a podcast, the same name. You can find it on all the podcast servers. And then, but the website, it's going to be hard to remember, okay? Because I made it really difficult. It's called screwtheirs.now.site, NOW.SITE. Okay.
I love that. I get the giggles when I kept seeing that.
And I'm all over TikTok. I mean, I'm on social media all over the place. I mean, I'm on TikTok, YouTube, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So you can, you can find me. So, but screwtheirs.now.site is my website.
Screwtheirs.now.site. I love that. I mean, you can't get a better handle for your web page at this point. I mean, not that you're screwing the IRS, but you're helping people definitely skirt around the IRS.
It is perfectly legal to avoid
tax. It's completely legal.
You can't evade them, but you can avoid them through any and all legal means. And this is a legal means that people just don't know about.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you sharing that. I want to say secret with us, because you're exposing the fact that there is these options that not everyone knows about. And it goes back through the history that you were telling us. And I thought that was, I love the history lesson. So thank you so much for all of this today. And is there any final words? What about your view on financial freedom? Tell me what that looks like to you.
Well, I mean, I've really had financial freedom for the last 20 years when I broke through in my short sale business. And they say money doesn't buy you happiness, but it removes a lot of the sadness.
I love that.
It gives you choices. Money gives you choices that you wouldn't have normally. And because of this, I've been able to travel the world. I've been able to, follow my passions. In fact, what I'm going to be doing next summer, actually at the end of spring of next year, I am going to go completely independent, in the sense of I'm not going to have any. I'm stuttering here. I'm trying to figure out how to do this.
You're fine.
Over 20 years, I put all of our real estate in Russia. Okay, and so I don't have much in the U.S. anymore. we downsize so much in the U.S. because my family is in Russia right now. My daughter, my son, my wife. So I'm a passionate World War II amateur historian, and I have always been frustrated by, these documentaries you'll see on the History Channel or whatever, and they're so inaccurate. And I said, you know what? One day I'm going to just get, I'm going to hire a guy to be with me, like Rick Steves does. If you know him on the travel guy on PBS, he goes around to Europe, journeys to Europe. I'm going to do the same thing, but it's going to be a World War II thing. I'm going to go everywhere, and I'm going to put the stories that people don't talk about. I have my own channel on Roku and Amazon Fire, and I'm just going to have this channel. I'm just going to go, and I'm going to spend a year doing that, and I can run my business wherever. If I have a laptop and I have an internet signal, I can run my business. Wow. So, but that's what I'm saying. Money gives you the freedom to do what you want, not what you have to. That's to me is the definition of freedom.
That's a great sentiment. I love that. And please keep me informed of that, because my husband is like a diehard World War II love, and he would watch that in a heartbeat. He would totally just ignore me the rest of the time and watch that. So yes.
May 2023 is when I tend to start. So that's
okay. Well, we will keep in touch with that. And I'm going to be keeping in touch with you because I love what you're doing. And I think this is great. And I really appreciate all the education that you bring to the table in this matter, because I think it's something that people don't really talk about. So Dohn, I just want to thank you for being on our show today. I want to thank our sponsor, CamaPlan, and our producers, Honeycomb Productions. Also, just make sure you follow Dohn on all his socials, his podcast, his, what was it? To screw the IRS.now.site. Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So make sure you follow him there. And again, we just appreciate you being here. If you want to learn more about self-directed IRAs through CamaPlan, please visit camaplan.com. And I'm looking forward to our next journey together.